Have you ever stopped to reflect on how your priorities shift as you age? The things that once felt vital, like maintaining a large circle of friends, may no longer hold the same weight in your later years. Here's a bold perspective after 70. You might not need friends in the way you once believed. This isn't about choosing loneliness or shutting out connection. It's about embracing the freedom to live authentically unburdened by social expectations that no longer resonate with your values. In this exploration, we'll dive into 6 powerful reasons why friendships may take a backseat as you age. By releasing the pressure to maintain relationships that no longer spark joy, you can unlock a profound sense of independence, nurture your mental and emotional well-being, and focus on what truly brings you fulfillment. This journey is not about isolation, it's about empowerment, self-discovery, and crafting a life that feels deeply meaningful. Stay with us until the end, as these insights might transform how you view your relationships and your later years, offering a fresh lens on what it means to live well. Let's begin with the first reason. Reason 1. You no longer need to prove yourself to anyone. One of the greatest gifts of aging is the realization that you no longer need to seek validation from others. In your younger years, friendships were often tied to a desire to fit and gain approval or uphold a certain image. You might have felt pressure to impress colleagues, stay active in social groups, or ensure you were included in every gathering. There was an unspoken drive to be seen valued or admired, a need to prove your worth through your social connections. But by the time you reach your 70s, that pressure begins to dissolve. You've lived long enough to understand that your value is rooted in who you are, shaped by the life you've built, the challenges you've overcome, and the wisdom you've gained. At this stage, you've likely raised families, pursued careers, navigated hardships, and created a legacy that stands on its own. You've earned the right to define your worth without needing a crowd of friends to affirm it. The urge to prove yourself to be the most popular, the most connected, or the most admired loses its hold. Instead, you focus on what feels authentic, what aligns with your passions, and what brings you peace. Consider Ruth, a 71-year-old retired librarian who spent decades cultivating a vibrant social network. As a young woman, she was always the one organizing book club meetings, hosting holiday parties, and keeping in touch with colleagues, neighbors, and acquaintances. Her bustling social life was a source of pride, a sign that she was valued and connected. But after retiring, Ruth noticed a shift. Many of those relationships began to fade. Colleagues stopped calling, and acquaintances drifted away. At first, she felt a pang of rejection and tried to hold on to those ties, sending emails and planning get-togethers. Then one quiet morning, while tending to her vegetable garden, she had a revelation. Why was she chasing connections that were more about routine than genuine meaning? She decided to stop reaching out to people who didn't reciprocate and turned her energy toward her passions, growing organic produce, reading classic novels, and volunteering at a local literacy program. For the first time in years, she felt truly liberated. No more forced conversations or worrying about others' opinions. She was living for herself, and it was deeply fulfilling. This shift is transformative. When you let go of the need for external validation, you reclaim energy once spent on maintaining superficial relationships. You no longer need to keep up appearances or prove your worth through a large social circle. You are enough just as you are. And that realization is a cornerstone of a more authentic, self-directed life. Reason 2, peace becomes more valuable than socializing. As you age, a subtle but powerful shift occurs. Peace becomes more precious than constant socializing. In your 20s, 30s, or even 50s, being surrounded by people might have felt essential. Social gatherings, lively conversations, and a full calendar were often seen as markers of a vibrant, fulfilling life. But after 70, you may find that the quiet moments free from noise, drama, or social obligations are far more nourishing to your soul. Friendships, even the strongest ones, come with responsibilities. There are phone calls to return invitations, to accept events to attend, and unspoken expectations to stay connected. Over time, these can start to feel like burdens rather than joys. The effort to keep up with social demands can outweigh the benefits, especially when conversations become repetitive, filled with complaints, or centered on topics that no longer resonate with you. Take Edward, a 74-year-old retired engineer who once thrived on social activity. His weeks were packed with coffee, meetups, golf outings with friends, and long phone calls catching up on everyone's lives. He enjoyed the camaraderie, but as he grew older, he noticed these interactions often left him feeling drained rather than energized. Friends would recount the same stories, vent about health issues, or engage in gossip he found tedious. One day after a particularly exhausting lunch filled with complaints about the state of the world, Edward decided to make a change. He began declining invitations that didn't genuinely excite him and stopped feeling guilty for skipping group events. Instead, he spent his mornings walking through a nearby park, listening to classical music, or sitting quietly with a cup of tea watching the sunrise. To his surprise, these solitary moments brought him more joy than any crowded gathering ever had. This isn't about withdrawing from life. It's about choosing what truly nourishes you. At this age, you've earned the right to say no to social obligations that don't spark joy. You can savor the calm of your own space, free from the pressure to be on for others. Peace becomes a gift you give yourself, and its value only deepens with time. By prioritizing quiet over chaos, you create a life that feels more balanced, grounded, and fulfilling. If this idea resonates with you, let us know by commenting reason 2 below. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to stay updated with more insights like these. Reason 3, fewer friendships mean fewer disappointments. Life has a way of teaching us a hard but valuable lesson. Not every friendship is meant to endure. Over the decades, you've likely experienced relationships that drifted apart, friends who weren't there when you needed them most, or connections that felt one-sided. By the time you reach 70, you've seen enough to realize that maintaining a large circle of friends can sometimes lead to more disappointment than fulfillment. Friendships often come with expectations, checking in regularly, being available for support, or making time for social events. But when those expectations aren't mutual, it can lead to frustration and hurt. You might call someone who never returns the call, plan a gathering only to have it canceled, or find yourself giving more emotional energy than you receive. At this stage in life, you don't need that kind of stress weighing you down. Consider Clara, a 77-year-old who spent years nurturing friendships from her career as a teacher. She prided herself on staying connected, hosting brunches, sending thoughtful cards, and checking in with friends regularly. But as time passed, she noticed a pattern. Many of her friends only reached out when they needed something, a favor, advice, or a listening ear. When Clara faced her own challenges like a health scare or the loss of a close family member, those same friends were often too busy or distracted to offer support. At first, it hurt deeply. She wondered why her efforts weren't reciprocated. Then she made a conscious choice. She stopped investing in one-sided relationships. She focused on a few meaningful connections, her son, a lifelong friend from childhood, and her weekly book club, and let the rest fade naturally. The result was a sense of relief. She felt lighter, unburdened by the disappointment of unmet expectations. Fewer friendships don't equate to isolation. They mean freedom from emotional letdowns. By letting go of relationships that no longer serve you, you create space for those that are mutual, meaningful, and uplifting. You don't need a long list of friends to feel connected, just a few who truly value you as much as you value them. Reason 4, your time becomes more precious. As you age, time takes on a new and profound significance. In your younger years, it might have felt like you had an endless supply, plenty of time to socialize, build networks, or keep up with acquaintances. But after 70, you come to see time as your most precious resource. Every hour, every day, every moment counts, and you become more intentional about how you choose to spend it. Friendships, while often valuable, require time and energy. Phone calls, visits, social events, and even casual check-ins can fill your calendar, but not all of them contribute to your happiness. Some relationships are rooted in habit, people you've known for decades but no longer connect with deeply. At this stage, you have the freedom to ask yourself, is this how I want to spend my time? Does this friendship bring me joy, or is it just another obligation? Take Margaret, an 81-year-old who used to love hosting dinner parties and attending community events. Her social life was vibrant, filled with laughter and conversation. But as she aged, she found these activities less fulfilling. The conversations often felt repetitive, dominated by small talk or complaints about health and politics. One evening, after a particularly draining gathering, where she spent hours listening to the same old stories, Margaret decided to make a change. She stopped saying yes to every invitation and began focusing on what truly brought her joy, restoring vintage quilts, reading historical novels, in spending quiet evenings listening to classical music. She discovered that by reclaiming her time, she felt more fulfilled than ever before. Her days were no longer dictated by social expectations, but by her own desires. When you prioritize your time, you prioritize yourself. You don't owe anyone your hours, and you don't need to maintain friendships out of obligation. By choosing activities and relationships that align with your values, you create a life that feels rich, meaningful, and deeply personal. If this point speaks to you, comment reason 4 below to share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more insights to inspire your journey. Reason 5. True companionship comes from within. One of the greatest myths about aging is that happiness depends on having a large social circle. In reality, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you cultivate with yourself. By the time you reach 70, you've spent decades growing, learning, reflecting, and evolving. You know your strengths, your passions, your quirks, and your values better than anyone else. This self-awareness unlocks a profound truth: you are your own best companion. Society often portrays solitude as something to fear, equating it with loneliness. But there's a significant difference between being alone and feeling lonely. Some of the happiest people in their later years are those who embrace solitude as an opportunity for self-discovery, reflection, and peace. When you're comfortable in your own company, you no longer need others to fill your time, entertain you, or validate your worth. Consider Alice, a 76-year-old who once believed that a busy social life was the key to happiness. She filled her days with lunches, phone calls with friends, and group activities, fearing that slowing down would leave her isolated. But over time, she noticed that these interactions often left her feeling drained rather than uplifted. She was constantly adapting to others' expectations, engaging in small talk, or navigating social dynamics that felt exhausting. One day, Alice decided to try something different. She spent a week focusing entirely on herself. She took long walks through a nearby botanical garden, journaled her memories of her travels, and rediscovered her love for playing the violin. To her surprise, she felt more content than she had in years. She didn't need external distractions to feel whole. She was enough on her own. When you embrace your own company, you unlock a level of freedom that's difficult to find in social settings. You can enjoy a quiet morning without needing to call someone, savor a meal, without feeling the need to make conversation or reflect on your life without external input. And when you're at peace with yourself, the relationships you do choose to maintain become effortless, based on genuine connection rather than obligation or fear of loneliness. Reason 6, letting go, opens the door to a more fulfilling life. Perhaps the most powerful choice you can make after 70 is to let go. Let go of friendships that no longer bring joy. Let go of the pressure to maintain a large social circle just for the sake of appearances. Let go of the outdated belief that solitude equals loneliness. When you release these expectations, you create space for a life that's simpler, freer, and more aligned with who you are at this stage. Many people hold on to friendships out of habit, even when those relationships feel more like work than joy. They attend events they don't enjoy, return calls out of duty, or keep up appearances because it's what they've always done. But after 70, you have the wisdom to ask, does this still serve me? Is this relationship adding to my happiness, or am I holding on out of obligation? Take Benjamin, a 79-year-old who once prided himself on his active social life. He was always organizing outings, hosting game nights, or checking in with old friends from his days as a journalist. But as he aged, he realized many of these connections were rooted in routine rather than genuine joy. Some friends only called to vent about their problems, while others seemed disinterested unless he initiated contact. One day, after a particularly draining phone call filled with complaints, Benjamin decided to stop forcing it. He let go of relationships that felt draining and focused on what truly mattered to him, spending time with his grandchildren, exploring nature photography, and enjoying quiet evenings, reading by the window. The result was a sense of freedom he hadn't expected. He felt more fulfilled than ever, unburdened by social obligations that no longer served him. Letting go doesn't mean closing yourself off from the world. It means creating space for what brings you joy, whether that's a hobby, a close family member, or simply the freedom to live on your own terms. When you stop chasing friendships for the sake of having them, you discover that true fulfillment comes from within, not from the number of people in your life. If this idea resonates with you, comment reason 6 below to let us know. And if you're finding value in this content, Please subscribe and share to support more insights like these. Final thoughts. As we conclude this exploration, take a moment to reflect on what we've discussed. The idea that you don't need friends after 70 isn't about isolation, it's about empowerment. It's about choosing peace over pressure, authenticity over obligation, and yourself over outdated social expectations. By letting go of friendships that no longer serve you, you create space for a life that's richer, simpler, and more fulfilling than you might have imagined. Which of these reasons spoke to you the most? Have you already begun prioritizing your own happiness over social demands? Or has this perspective inspired you to rethink your relationships and how you spend your time? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what resonated with you and how you plan to apply these insights to your life. Your reflections inspire us to keep creating content that informs, uplifts, and encourages. If you found this exploration valuable, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue delivering meaningful content to inspire your journey. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to connecting with you in the next exploration of life's possibilities.